네, 버나드 케인과 함께하는 미국 주식 시간입니다. 최근에 미국 증시에 서학 개미들의 움직임, 매수 자금이 굉장히 많이 유입되고 있다고 하는데 올해도 매수 유입이 기대가 된다고 합니다. 그만큼 지금 미국 증시를 뒤흔들고 있는 게 바로 서학 개미들이거든요. 앞으로 어떤 종목을 좀 매수하면 좋을지 저희가 체크해 드리기 전에 그동안 소개해드렸던 종목들 수익률 베스트 톱5 체크하고 오시죠. 네, 먼저 첫 번째 종목 더 트레이드 데스크 부동의 1위입니다. 방송 9월 10일에 좀 소개를 드렸고요. 방송일 종가가 72.78달러인데 현재 종가는 90.11달러입니다. 어제는 1%대 하락을 보이긴 했지만 현재까지 상승률 23% 넘게 챙겨가고 있습니다. 다음 종목은 빌닷컴이고요. 방송일 종가 199.7달러, 어제 종가 기준 233.5달러를 기록했습니다. 현재까지 상승률은 16.9%를 기록하고 있습니다. 자, 세 번째 종목은 많은 분들이 알고 계시는 마이크로소프트라는 종목이고요. 방송일 종가 300달러, 현재는 334달러고요. 한 3달 동안 34달러 정도 상승한 모습입니다. 네 번째 종목은 스노우플레이크, 어제는 1.9% 정도 하락을 했지만 그래도 현재까지 상승률 10% 넘게 지금 유지를 해주고 있는 모습입니다. 자, 마지막 종목은 AMN 헬스케어 서비스인데 어제는 미국 증시에서 바이오 종목들이 좀 부진한 모습을 보였습니다. 어제 하루 동안 1%가량 하락하면서 방송일 종가 109달러였고요. 어제 종가 기준은 120.80달러 현재 기록하고 있습니다. 네, 오늘도 버니와 함께 미국 주식 알아보도록 하겠습니다. 지난 시간에 이야기 나눠봤던 글로벌 보안 기업들 이어서 이야기 나눠볼 텐데요. 오늘의 종목은 크라우드 스트라이크입니다. 다른 두 가지 종목 중에 그 두 번째 종목인데 일단 미국의 CISA가 엔드포인트와 워크로드 보호를 위해서 이 크라우드 스트라이크를 주요 플랫폼으로 선정했다고 하는데 사실 단어가 너무 어렵기 때문에 좀 자세하게 설명을 부탁드리겠습니다.
CrowdStrike has a market cap of around $56 billion. So the company provides endpoint security solutions to things like laptop, desktops, and Internet of Things devices. So as opposed to when we looked at Zscaler, which was a cloud-based system, this is an endpoint security system. CrowdStrike's platform was born in the cloud, okay, so it's always been there. There's no messy changes from the on-premises to cloud business model or anything like that. CrowdStrike is taking market share from legacy players as enterprises are more comfortable turning off their old solutions and moving to the cloud now. CrowdStrike has innovative technology. The essence of the innovation, let's say, is as follows, okay? So traditional cybersecurity is signature-based. That means that the software looks for code, okay? Malware, viruses, or any other bad actors that has been previously identified. In contrast, that's not what CrowdStrike does. CrowdStrike instead looks for suspicious behavior, so it's thinking out of the box. It does this by installing an agent on the device to be secured. That agent then feeds relevant device behavior information back to CrowdStrike, which then determines whether anything untoward or anything suspicious or anything unusual is happening while CrowdStrike is pulling that information from all the devices it secures. That allows it to quickly understand emerging threats and take necessary action. This is behavior-based cybersecurity, and it's the crux of CrowdStrike's solutions. CrowdStrike's Falcon platform, which is where the information comes to, is a cloud-based security software system that uses artificial intelligence process approximately using 6 trillion bits of data, using its threat graph, okay, each week. So what happens is it pulls all this information in, and then the threat graph, this software platform that it uses, using artificial intelligence, is constantly looking for things that are unusual, suspicious, unexplained, that sort of thing. It uses machine learning to identify malicious activity, whether it involves malware, ransomware, identity theft, or other attacks on digital assets. Extremely innovative, out-of-the-box thinking. CrowdStrike also has a team ready to respond in case a company needs help after an attack, because you can't be perfect and catch everything. A customer of CrowdStrike will have a bit of software, it's called an agent, that runs on every endpoint. So every desktop, every laptop, every Internet of Things device. That's different than Zscaler. And it collects this information and then is transmitted over the network to its database that is called that threat graph that we talked about. CrowdStrike then analyzes the data using artificial intelligence, pattern matching, and other proprietary algorithms to identify and stop cyber attacks. It then deploys these protections to all of their other customers. So once they see it on somebody, it's then, okay, we understand this happens over here. Everybody else, if they can protect it, everybody else gets protected. So revenue was up 93% in 2020, which is a little bit more than Zscaler, and 82% in fiscal 2021. So the current consensus estimates suggest that revenue is going to grow by over 50% to over $1.25 billion in fiscal 22, and earnings per share is going to grow 44% to 39%. So to 39 cents a share. So CrowdStrike's making money, Zscaler's not quite making money yet. Okay, the company reported second quarter results at the end of August, and they beat expectations. Revenue was up 70%. All this is all positive. Management said that the major growth drivers continue to be the shift towards the cloud and growing demand for solutions due to cyber attacks. The percentage of customers with multiple products that CrowdStrike has is over 50%.
네, 점점 디지털 산업이 발전하면서 이 사이버 공격에 대한 보안 산업도 발전을 하는 것 같습니다. 정말 이 기술은 우리가 꼭 필요할 그런 산업 같고 앞으로도 미래 먹거리로도 좀 충분하게 이용이 되지 않을까 싶습니다. 지난주에 지스케일러라는 종목도 같이 알아봤었는데 이 두 기업들 성과가 어땠는지 한번 체크해 주시죠.
So let's now let's pull away and just compare the stock price performance of both of these companies. So when I look at the stock price performance right now, I've got Zscaler up. And remember, I said it went public in early 2018, and we can see that that stock has really done well. And coming out of the pandemic in March of 2020 till like a month ago, that stock did great. This is a weekly chart of Zscaler going back to when it had the IPO. I think Zscaler started incorporating in 2011, so it spent 7 years before it went public. CrowdStrike, same chart, same issue. It started to pop really strongly out of that March pandemic low. And then the same thing we had. Remember, I talked about the fact initially that the growth exploded, and then the company, people thought in early, late 2020, early 2021, that these stocks would start to falter a little bit. And we can see the stock set back, but then we had another period of growth that started in the second quarter in the stock, and it traded up to $300. It's set back now decently, but basically the stock's been a great outperformer. So it's up, it was up 6 times from the March low to the third quarter high this year. When I look at CrowdStrike and I look at the stock price performance and I compare that on the top chart to how CrowdStrike has outperformed, or whether it's outperformed the NASDAQ composite, or the NASDAQ 100, I'm sorry, that's on the bottom chart. We can see that during the periods of outperformance is where the great performance of CrowdStrike stock has occurred. So that is March of 2020 into basically early 2021, and then we started to go a little bit higher. Now, one thing that's really interesting, so I think the stock has great growth potential. I think the industry's got great growth potential. But look at what happened at the top of the market here. And I highlighted these with these two little red arrows. The stock basically triple topped up there just underneath $300. But you can see that what happened was the NASDAQ 100 went higher and the CrowdStrike stock stopped. And that's why we saw the erosion in the bottom clip there with the red arrow pointing down, and we started to break down. So since then, the stock has underperformed the NASDAQ 100. And I'm looking for opportunities where I can find that stock going back to outperforming the NASDAQ 100. Doing the same thematic thought process, weekly charts from the time that the stock went public. Okay, the top chart is a weekly chart of Zscaler with the 20-week moving average, and the bottom chart is Zscaler compared to the NASDAQ 100. So we can also see, once again, that most of the time, looking at the bottom, we start from the lower left and work to the top right. That stock is outperforming the NASDAQ composite, the NASDAQ 100. And we can identify periods where that outperformance is significant. And we can see once again in March of 2020 that that stock did great. And then at the early part of 2021, the stock stopped a little bit, you know, saw a little bit of sell-off, but then the growth continued again. Now, let's compare the two of them to each other, okay? So usually we compare a stock to the NASDAQ. A lot of times we compare stocks to competitors. In this case, we'll compare these two good stocks to each other. So you can see here that if I just look at this period of this year, that stock, Zscaler, slightly underperformed CrowdStrike, but then since July and August has significantly outperformed CrowdStrike. And I will talk about why I think I like one versus the other in just a minute.
네, 지스케일러와 이 크라우드 스트라이크라는 두 종목이 계속해서 우상향 곡선을 그려가고 있고 앞으로도 나스닥을 능가할 수 있다라고 점쳐 주셨습니다. 그렇다면 두 종목 중에 한 가지 종목만 선택해서 투자하고 싶다면 어떤 종목 좀 선택해 보면 좋을까요?
So don't forget, I'm looking for disruptor industries, disruptor stocks, stocks that can significantly outperform over a 3 to 5 year window. And I want to have 15 to 25 of those. And I want to constantly keep the stocks that are outperforming. This industry is going to be an outperforming industry. This industry is going to be a great growth industry. Both stocks could have great contributions. But when I think about one stock and why one company is, to me, so much more interesting than the other, George Kurtz is the co-founder and CEO of CrowdStrike. He owns CrowdStrike stock worth over $177 million currently. But over the last 2 years, Kurtz sold CrowdStrike stock worth over $376 million. So he's monetizing his own wealth in terms of cashing out. Jay Chaudhry is the founder and CEO of Zscaler. He's an electrical engineer by training. He's a serial entrepreneur who has founded several companies during the last 22 years and has more than 2 decades worth of experience in the internet and computer security space. He's already made a lot of money. But his compensation currently in Zscaler is primarily stock options, which aligns him well with us as investors, while the other members of his management team are paid basically a higher base salary than him. Much of his compensation comes in the form of stock grants. He owns over 20% of the outstanding shares. Chaudhry has a lot of skin in this game. Now, don't forget, I have a market cap of Zscaler at $48 billion. 20% of that means he owns over $6 billion worth of stock. Kurtz has 177 million. Now, that's still a lot of money, and no doubt about it. And that's great. And it's good for him that he sold 376 million. But Chaudhry's got the skin in the game that I believe one of the biggest factors in determining whether to buy a stock is a founder still involved? And does he have a lot of skin in this game? Is he an owner of the stock? Does he share like an unprecedented, overweighted way how successful this is? Remember when we talked about Arista, ANET, that stock? That founder had over $5 billion worth of stock, okay? Upstart Technology, we've talked about Upstart Technologies before. They own the insiders own 16% of that company. There are companies that we really care about. So this is what I look for in identifying great stock companies and great stock opportunities. And then what I think about is once we get these and we can identify that these are disruptor industries, disruptor companies, that sort of thing, we look for great revenue growth. Because if we can find, and I look at earnings per share, revenue growth, free cash flow, we talked about this once before, all the other things, the biggest driver of outstanding stock performance returns is revenue growth. It's not income growth, it's not free cash flow, it's revenue growth. And revenue growth in disruptor technologies means we can't pick the top of it. That's what happened to Google. When we thought about Google and we thought about Amazon way long time ago, we never imagined the revenue growth that those things had. They were disruptor companies. And we're trying to find the next Amazon, the next Google, the next Apple. Apple disrupted the planet with their iPhones, their iTunes, their iPod. It's been unbelievable. So we're trying to find companies like that. And I just think we want to think out of the box. And what we found here is companies that don't have a ton of fixed assets that they have to constantly stay invested with. So that growth all goes eventually to the bottom line.
네, 오늘의 글로벌 보안기업인 두 가지 종목을 소개해드렸습니다. 지스케일러 그리고 크라우드 스트라이크고요. 지스케일러의 이 티커명은 GS 그리고 크라우드 스트라이크의 티커명은 CRWD입니다. 한번 찾아보시고 계속해서 나스닥을 능가하면서 좋은 성장 동력을 갖고 있는 종목이라고 하니까 계속해서 좀 지켜보시고요. 또 문자 샵 0082번으로 버니의 미국주식이라고 보내주시면 버니와 함께 실시간으로 이야기 나눠보실 수가 있습니다.